Hello everybody, welcome to my 2011 long-term BMW 535i GT review. I want to quickly go over the outside and exterior of the car and the type of things it features. We've had this car for 6 years now. It's got 70,000 kilometers on it, so let's see how this car has sort of held up. Let's start off with the headlights. The newer BMWs have that, it's more squared off now, the angel eyes, but this car still retains the circles. I quite like that look still. Their signals are LED and they're extremely bright. One thing I really like about what BMW does with their lighting systems is that they make sure everything's very bright, and I really like that because it really adds to the safety of the car. We have the sport package on this car, so there are fog lights, and we have the headlight sprayers here. I always found those a bit redundant. It actually just ends up getting water all over your hood and stuff like that. With the sport package, it has these 20-inch wheels. The 535i is a all-wheel drive car, as you can see by the X-Drive. It's got this sort of very elongated, almost like a raised wagon type of look with this slope back, fastback. This is probably one of the first cars that sort of set that trend. It's sort of BMW's test bed at the time, and I'm going to go over that a little bit more. The rear lights are quite nice. That design is very nice. It's very visible, and again, when you're signaling, it's extremely bright so everyone can see what you're doing. And it's got the dual exhaust, the GT. There's two trunk openings here on the bottom. This is the reverse camera here. So if in the middle, this opens like a traditional trunk, and then you can close that. And then off to the side here is where you have the automatic type of opening system here. Of course, you have your buttons here, so you can close it. So that about does it for the outside of the car. This slope back look probably doesn't really, it's not the most prettiest thing. In fact, it's quite ugly, but it sort of works. The cool thing about this 535i is that it's based on the 7 Series platform, so it rides on the 7 Series chassis, but it uses a 5 Series interior. So let's go look at, we're going to look at that now. Alright, so now we're in the inside of the 535i. It's spitting outside a little bit. This car is basically fully loaded. So what we see here is, this is a 6-year-old car, and BMW basically used this to test out all the new technologies that you see that are basically standard on their cars now. So we have the lane departure system here, which I can turn on and turn off. So when I turn that off, the 2 lines disappeared from the dash up here, and then you have the blind spot detection system as well, so you can turn those on and turn those off. So I turn that on, you can see there has the 2 lines there. The display here is, they call it that split system, so the bottom part is digital, and you can go through menus here, your radio function here, and you can scroll through your options there. So you got the mile, your kilometer, and your date, things like that. Back then this was an optional larger screen. It's quite nice. So because I was just reversing, you can see the lines like most cars now. This is the trajectory of your car. Because this has the sensors as well, so you can see here it'll start beeping, and something that's really cool is that you have that top-down bird's eye view. I think this is one of the first cars on the market that you could do that. So right now with my iDrive controller, I can select a bunch of options. Right now it's in rear view camera. I can press that, and now that turns into that top-down look. So I can see basically where the car is going top-down, which is quite cool. And that automatically switches out once you're moving faster than 5 kilometers or so. So typical BMW, you have your iDrive, quite simple to use. I think it pretty much perfected it. I press menu, I can go in and I can change the things, what I want. You can go to vehicle info and look at your vehicle status and things like that on board. And it's not very customizable, but it's customizable enough. In the settings, you can choose a bunch of these options. One of the things that you can choose, which I found was cool, is in the tailgate section. You can choose how high you want it to open. I think this is to basically just make sure that it's not going to hit your garage, because on my garage I cannot have it open at the maximum height or else it will hit. So that's probably why they have that there. And you have lightings and your climate and your speed and your tones. I have the tones all the way off, but they still do that really annoying dinging when you open the car. This is one, I think this is also one of the first cars that uses ZF 8-speed. So you have this pretty cool looking black chrome shift stock. I think it's quite pretty. And it is a ZF 8-speed. It shifts very quickly for basically it's an automatic. You can go over to, you have to press the left button here to go down to drive. You can switch over, and if you press park, it'll actually go over on its own, which I think that's cool. That's mechanical. So that's a really nice little feature the ZF has. Down here, there aren't a plethora of buttons, which is nice. You have your electric parking brake, your auto hold function. So if you're on a hill and you just take your brake off, the car will still remain standing and not roll. You have your parking. This is your cameras that you want to use. So you can, if I press the camera button, there's 2 cameras on the front bumper on the side. I can see around blank corners, so to speak. I don't really find that very useful. That's what that button does. Then you have a hill descent button here. You have your drive modes here, which I never ever use. I have this car in normal all the time. This car is not a sporty car. There's no point putting in the sport mode. And even though you can change in the settings what this does, what sport does, if you want to make the chassis stiff but the steering light and stuff, you can change that. But in this type of car, it is a 5,000 pound car. I think it's north of 5,000 pounds. You just want to leave it in normal. And you have your typical HVAC controls here and your radio controls. So with the radio controls, it's pretty cool because if I just these are touch sensitive. So what that means is you still need to press it, but just hovering my fingers over them will do this. Now look at the country channel on top of the screen. So because I don't know what these, or I may not remember what my presets are, just hovering over it will tell me what the preset is, and then I can press it to activate that preset. So I think that's a cool feature, but because I actually don't really remember what the presets are, it's pretty overkill in tech there, but I think it's pretty cool. You have your automatic recirculation. So this can detect if the air is too dirty outside. If it is really dirty outside, it'll automatically recirculate the air from the inside. You have air conditioning and max air conditioning, heated seats, and the direction of the air coming through the vents. Now, this is a used vehicle, and you can see that this button's paint is already gone, and this one is slowly losing it as well. So that's something to note about the quality that they're using on the button. Obviously not a deal breaker for a car. You have a little storage here, comes out very slowly. You can't really fit much in here. It's not deep enough for sunglasses. So push that back in, door locks. You have a cubby here, which is dual sided. I don't really see the feature of that, but you can lock this here with your key. And you have your cup holders here, which this is probably one of my biggest complaints about the interior of the 5 Series. So this interior would be also the same in a 5 Series sedan. Which is you put the cup holders here, and quite often I have my travel mug, and I think a lot of people do have their travel mug with their coffee they go to work with, or a lot of people do use takeout in their cups. Now once they're here, there is no way you can access your HVAC controls at all. So you literally need to go around it, and it's the most annoying thing. You just cannot access your HVAC controls. So if you have 2 cups, there's no way if you're a passenger. Now if you're driving alone, which you probably might be doing 80% or 90% of the time, I do put my travel mug in the passenger side instead. That way I can access my side because it is dual climate, and it gets around the problem that way. But I feel like it's sort of a band-aid of a problem. I think this is really dumb, having the cup holders right in front of your HVAC, because there are no other real spaces to put things. So my cell phone ends up going there, my wallet ends up going there, and stuff like that as well too. You have your fog light controls here, and your lights control here, your dimmer, dash dimmer. There's a grab handle here, which actually is where I end up putting my wallet. And up here you have your garage door openers and stuff like that. So in the back is actually quite luxurious. It's probably better to be a passenger in this car than it is to be a driver. It's got this massive sunroof as well. I'm going to bring a little bit more light in here. These are cup holders as well. So this, you press the button, this comes out, and then you press the other one, this cubby hole. And these seats can actually slide forward and back. So this is basically a 5 Series interior riding on a 7 Series chassis. So let's see how this actually drives. Alright, by no means is this supposed to be a driving experience, this car, but since BMW is the ultimate driving machine, they market all their cars to be able to have some sort of driving feel, and this car is no exception. Even though it is so large, and it is all-wheel drive, and it weighs over 5,000 pounds, it can actually hold its own in the corners at speed. BMW really engineers their cars to give you that confidence cornering, even in something that's essentially an absolute boat. So everyone even knows that their top-of-the-line sedan, luxury sedan, the 7 Series, as much as a luxury cruiser that car is, it was known to have that driving dynamic and feel that the S-Class never had. It's just, it lost obviously the sales war with the S-Class, because when you're buying that type of vehicle, you're not really looking to go around exits off of highways at speed. That's clearly not your goal. Your goal is to have the most comfortable driving experience possible, and that's where the S-Class excels. Now, so getting back to this car, because this rides on a 7 Series platform, it will handle like a 7 Series that's raised up a little bit. Unfortunately, this car does come with run-flat tires, and it's very noticeable for me at least, especially because it's on 20-inch wheels. So you've got the 20-inch wheel, you have a large wheel, which means your tires are going to have a small sidewall, and you're running run flats. So it's very, very stiff carcass. It's noisy on the highway. and it does not ride over bumps very well. You can tell that the car is absorbing the bump very well. The dampening is very plush, but the initial impact is very, very rigid. So that's sort of it's not the most desirable feeling. I've been in S classes and it definitely absorbs bumps better. But what else can I say about the driving sort of experience in this car? You're very relaxed in this car. Because the space is so big and there's quite a bit of green space, it makes an extremely good highway cruiser. And partnered up with the N55 single turbo twin scroll, the car actually gets very, very good gas mileage. Now, how they have managed to achieve that feat is sort of beyond me, but just cruising on the highway on a full tank, you'll easily get 800 kilometers. So the car is actually quite streamlined. So on the highway, just going straight, it's actually a very, very comfortable car. And these seats with this optional Dakota leather, they're probably some of the most comfortable seats. Now, something I do need to mention is the driving position. This uses something that BMW has now named the command driving system, driving position. So you don't want to be sitting low in it and back like a conventional sedan or a car. What they actually made this driving position to replicate as more like a bus. So you want to be looking more downwards like this and commanding sort of the car that way. I always found it very, very difficult to find a natural driving position in this car. It has taken me forever to sort of use the infinite adjustments of the seat to finally find something that is comfortable for me and natural, that doesn't hurt my lower back. Sometimes I feel that when cars do have too many options and adjustments in the seating, it almost just makes you a bit lost. So now I sort of have figured a comfortable driving position, and that's definitely something to take note of. If you were to test drive this, you wouldn't adjust your seat the way you would traditionally in a vehicle. So you actually want to be high up, which I really hate being high up in cars, but you want to be high up because the steering wheel is tilted upwards on an angle. So you want to sort of be driving like a cargo van or a bus like that. So that takes a little bit getting used to, at least it did for me. The car, because it weighs so much, it definitely does not hide the weight very well, especially around town and lower cities. It can sort of feel burdensome, that's a word, driving such a heavy and large vehicle. The steering wheel can get quite weighty at times if you're driving this for about an hour in town, and then you have to get on the highway and off the highway, and then you're driving in town more. That type of driving can, for me on this vehicle, I feel it can get quite tiresome because it is so heavy. So when you brake, you can feel all that weight going forward. So let's talk about the brakes a little bit. The brakes are good. I think it's more down to the fact that the car is so heavy. So it's quite a shocker going from driving a regular size sedan to driving this car, because you actually need to consciously brake earlier with this because the car is just so heavy. The brake feel is not very good, but at the same time it's not horrible. It's sort of what you'd expect. It wants everything to be soft and very relaxed in this vehicle. So BMW did not incorporate this relaxed feel only on the braking side, but also on the acceleration side. So what that means is they have a soft acceleration on this car, and they mapped the throttle to do that intentionally, which means if I were to mash the throttle from a standstill, it will not just kick you back like crazy. It will have this gradual input of throttle and fuel basically into the engine. So rather than just tell the car the throttle's at 100% right away, even though your pedals to the metal, it's doing something more like 10, 35, 45, 65, 85, and then 100 to give you that soft acceleration. So it does that at all throttle positions. So when you're driving normally, because you're never going to be mashing the throttle from standstill in a car like this, when you're driving normally, what that does is it always creates this very serene, relaxed acceleration experience. So you never have that jerkiness. Even if your foot's jerky, or your person driving you is foot's jerky, you will never experience that because how they have done the ECU management on this car. It is always going to give you this gradual type of acceleration. Now, speaking of acceleration, one issue with this vehicle I find, and I don't know if it's just this one or we got unlucky, or if all the 535s have this issue, but when the vehicle is cold, especially at a stop sign, at a standstill, when you accelerate, it actually has a delay, and it's quite nerve-wracking. The delay is about 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds before you actually start going. So it must have something to do with that soft acceleration programming that they have. When you're at a standstill and you accelerate and you want to accelerate, the car just won't move. It hesitates for about 1.5 seconds, which is really disconcerting because sometimes you have that car coming and you know you can beat it if you just accelerate at the exact time you want the car to. But if it has that hiccup, it can be quite scary. So it's more prominent when the car is cold, for sure. And it seems to go away after the car has warmed up totally. But I'm not for certain what really the issue is with that. So we're just driving along the country road now, and you know, it's a large car, but the driving experience when I'm talking about looking at your blind spots and positioning the vehicle actually isn't too bad. So compared to say a pickup truck or even a regular height SUV like an Acura MDX or something like that, or an X5, this doesn't feel as clumsy and large because I think it's because you're actually lower to the ground, so you can sort of position the car more naturally if you're coming from driving a sedan. So that in that way it's actually less tiring, but because of the weight, it's sort of burdensome just how tiring it is. I actually wish in a car like this, BMW, because this is obviously an electric steering system, when you're going faster it gets heavy, and that's low speed, it's supposed to be light. But I really think that they should have just lightened up the steering wheel another 50% or so, because there really is no reason to have such a heavy steering wheel on a car that's already so heavy. You should try to hide the weight of the car with a very light steering wheel, which is what all the truck manufacturers do. When you're driving a full-size pickup, that thing is extremely heavy, but the steering is so light and it makes it not tiresome. I mean, if I'm really tired and I get into this car and have to drive it, it feels even more tiring. I feel like I'm getting actually more tired because the steering is so heavy. I have to really compliment BMW on their blind spot information system and their lane departure system, because when a car is right behind you, there's going to be a triangle in your blind spot. There's going to be a triangle that lights up, and it's very consistent. So I've driven other systems, more specifically the Audi system on a 2015 A3, and that system's a little bit different on how it displays the warning to you. On this car, when someone's there, it's there. It'll show up. And it's very, very, very consistent with where the car is, and once it's out of that area that they programmed the cameras to show and for the light to display, the light will turn off. So when it's in, the light's on, and when it's out, when the car's out, the light's off. On the Audi system, it's very inconsistent, which can actually be quite dangerous if you're relying a little bit on the system, because I noticed on the A3, when cars are in your blind spot, the light sometimes will be on, sometimes won't be on. And Audi uses a gradual system, so it will slowly turn on and then it'll be fully on depending on how much of the blind spot the car is in. And I think that's too fancy of a feature in their blind spot detection system, because the system just cannot detect the car in a consistent manner and tell the driver if the car is under your blind spot or not. So these features, it's always important to know that all cars can have these features now. Technology is cheap, but how well it works is a totally different story, and the BMW system works very, very well. Their blind spot information system is very well. Their lane departure is very good. It vibrates the steering a little bit just to remind you, look, you're going out of your lane. And they have a heated steering wheel on this, which heats up quite quickly. I quite enjoy that in the winter time. So that's basically how the car drives. The all-wheel drive system works pretty good in the winter time. And you know, as long as you have snow tires, it's quite nice. So with the extra weight of the car, because it's so heavy, this car makes an excellent winter vehicle. So that's the 2011 535 GT. From what I understand, this car basically has not changed since its inception, I think back in 2010, just because BMW threw all the latest tech in this car as a test bed. So to this day, they did those minor facelifts, and I believe the interior is still exactly the same. So 70,000 kilometers, a little paint going away from the button, the engine, everything has remained perfect. There's been no faults there. The only complaint I have is some of these design things they have with a couple holders. I don't agree with the position, and my local BMW dealer is an absolute horrendous experience because they have the worst mechanics. So apparently that's common, but that has nothing to do with the vehicle. So that is the 2011 535 GT.